Hi everyone, I'm Priya Ashok. In the previous video of ANS, we had studied about the autonomic nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system, about the anatomy and the functions. In this video, I shall be explaining the parasympathetic nervous system under the following headings: Introduction, Anatomy, Neurotransmitters, Receptors and the effects of parasympathetic nervous system on various tissues of the body. Coming to the parasympathetic nervous system. So the PNS is a subdivision of the autonomic nervous system. This is associated with the terms rest and digest, because the parasympathetic nervous system is concerned with conservation of energy. And the parasympathetic nervous system is functionally antagonistic to the sympathetic nervous system, which means that the effects the parasympathetic nervous system produces are quite the opposite of what the sympathetic nervous system has on the body. Moving on to the organization of the parasympathetic nervous system. Now, from the previous video, we have learned that the sympathetic nervous system is associated with the thoracolumbar outflow. On the other hand, the parasympathetic nervous system is associated with the craniosacral outflow. Now, why craniosacral? The term cranial over here refers to cranial nerves. And which cranial nerves are there? So, number 3, the oculomotor nerve. Number 7, the facial nerve. Number 9, the glossopharyngeal nerve. And number 10, the vagus nerve. And sacral here refers to S2, S3 and partly S4 as well. So what we need to remember over here is that 75% of the parasympathetic nervous system is a contribution of the vagus nerve. Before discussing the parasympathetic nervous system, its anatomy in detail, it is important to know about the neurotransmitters as well as the preganglionic neurons and the postganglionic neurons. So if this is the ganglion, here is the preganglionic neuron and this is the postganglionic neuron, and let's say this is the gland or the structure that it innervates. What you can see is the preganglionic neuron is longer and the postganglionic neuron here is shorter. So why is the postganglionic neuron shorter than the preganglionic neuron? It's a simple explanation. This ganglion is located quite close to the gland or the structure that it innervates, which means that the postganglionic neuron will be shorter compared to that of the preganglionic neuron. Then coming to the neurotransmitter. It's very simple to remember that in case of the parasympathetic nervous system, the neurotransmitter associated with both the preganglionic and the postganglionic neuron is one and the same, which is acetylcholine. And therefore the receptors are going to be cholinergic receptors, which depending on the structure innervated can either be M1, M2 or it can be M3. So coming to the structure of parasympathetic nervous system, like mentioned before, it is craniosacral. So the cranial nerves involved are 3, 7, 9 and 10, which is the vagus nerve. So preganglionic fibers from the oculomotor nerve, they enter the ciliary ganglion, from where the postganglionic fibers that arise supply the sphincter pupillae of the eye as well as the ciliary muscle of the eye. That was the third cranial nerve. Then preganglionic fibers arising from the 7th cranial nerve or the facial nerve move into two ganglion. One is the pterygopalatine ganglia, from where the postganglionic fibers that arise supply to the lacrimal gland and the nasal glands. And the other one moves into the submandibular ganglion, which then supplies to the submandibular gland. And then you have the preganglionic fibers arising from the glossopharyngeal nerve, which is the ninth cranial nerve. Now these fibers enter into the otic ganglion, from where the postganglionic fibers arise and supply to the parotid gland. Comes the vagus nerve. So the preganglionic fibers that arise from the vagus nerve supplies to most structures in the abdomen and the thorax. So what are these structures? One is you've got the esophagus. Two is you've got the heart, the stomach, small intestine, not to forget the liver, gallbladder and its duct, the pancreas, proximal part of the colon, and also the kidney and part of the ureters. Then comes the sacral outflow, which is mainly S2, S3, sometimes S4 as well. It comes out to the pelvic nerve. So this supplies to the bladder, that's the detrusor, and also to the sternal genitalia, both males and the females. So coming to the effects of the parasympathetic nervous system, one is on the eye. So we have M3 receptors which are present on the constrictor pupillae. When the parasympathetic nervous system acts on this muscle, it results in constriction of the pupil or what is called as miosis, allowing less light to enter into the eye. Next is on the GIT, which is the stomach and the intestines. It will increase the tone of the muscle, increase the secretions, and also increase the motility of the GI tract. On the liver, it's a simple action, that is, it helps in synthesis of glycogen. On the gallbladder and the duct, it contracts them, thereby increasing the release of bile. And on the pancreas, it increases the release of insulin. Now this has an explanation. We know that the parasympathetic nervous system is concerned with conservation of energy, which means that by the release of insulin from the pancreas, there is uptake of glucose and thereby decreasing the blood glucose level, which helps in conserving the energy in the body. Effects of the parasympathetic nervous system on the heart. So when it acts on the heart, that's via the vagus, it acts on the M2 receptors of the heart and results in decreased force of contraction and decreased heart rate. Then coming to the action of the parasympathetic nervous system on the bronchus. So here the bronchus, the smooth muscles, the receptors are the M3 receptors. So when the parasympathetic nervous system acts, it would result in bronchoconstriction. And again the action on the glands. So glands are also supplied by the M3 receptors. So upon parasympathetic nervous system stimulation, it would result in increased secretion, which is watery in nature, of the parotid glands, the salivary glands, lacrimal glands, nasal glands. On the bladder, the parasympathetic nervous system will act on the detrusor muscle of the bladder and cause its contraction, and on the sphincter with relaxation, that is relaxation of the sphincter of the bladder, which means it will help in emptying of the bladder. And another thing is its action on the external genitalia. So when it acts on the male penis, it will result in erection. So coming to the end of this video, I hope you've understood the concept of the parasympathetic nervous system in terms of the structure, the function, receptors involved and the neurotransmitters. Please do make sure you study this from a standard textbook. Thank you. Please do like, share and subscribe.